federal government sympathizes with Nigerians over hardship from scarcity of premium motor spirit. 30 vessels to deliver additional supply of 2.3 billion litres of PMS as oil slips on Ukraine's summit plan. Plus, domestic airlines raise fares by 100%. Least economy ticket now 50,000 naira beginning March 1. And that is our focus on the conversation this afternoon on Business Express. And the program is reaching you from Abuja, the nation's capital. I am Leah Katun Babatunde. Well, the queues have appeared to have eased, at least in the federal capital city, as the federal government appeals to Nigerians to be patient over hardship being experienced as a result of scarcity of premium motor spirit PMS. Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timothy Silva, made the appeal on Sunday in a statement by his senior advisor, Media and Communications, Horatius Egwa. The statement says in the last weeks, Nigerians have grappled with fuel scarcity not because of the absence of supply of products, but due to inspection failure, which allowed adulterated products into the country. The statement adds that this is regrettable and the federal government sympathizes with the citizenry over the unforeseen hardship occasioned by the unavailability scarcity. The minister said the midstream and downstream petroleum regulatory authority had been out on the streets ensuring that the situation normalizes quickly. Now, moving on, the federal government, ministries, departments and agencies have been advised to always furnish the Office of the Surveyor General of the Federation with their land titles for proper documentation. Surveyor General of the Federation, Abdulganiyu Adeyemi, gave the advice at a media briefing in Abuja, and Mie Ogidi reports.
A breathtaking green vegetation, laced with alluring aesthetics, Nigeria, spanning 923,768 square kilometers from the Gulf of Guinea in the south to the Sahel in the north. The surveying documents of this country are housed here in Gariki, Abuja, the office of the Surveyor General of the Federation. From analog to digital, special drones now doing the mapping, and for the printing, state-of-the-art equipment ready through private-public partnership.
You are supposed to have all the information that has to do with Nigeria here on the server.
Abdulganiyu Adeyemi, the new man on the job, is thinking new, thinking that comes with huge financial cost. The high-performance data center is just an example.
The center will cost nothing less than $1 billion to be fully operational, and I think the government is willing to do something about it. The management under my leadership is exploring various means within the law to ensure increased revenue generation for the office and the nation in general.
This is where all ministries, departments and agencies' land documents are statutorily expected to be, but remembering the office only when land disputes arise is quite frustrating, the Surveyor General lamented. It is a tasking job, and upgrading it to meet its national assignment is what before the new man on the job. Mie Ogidi.
Okay, to the business of the day, domestic airline operators have increased airfares on domestic roads by 100% with effect from March 1, 2022. The increase in fares will be across board. The decision reached by all the domestic operators sees the least economy ticket now selling for 50,000 naira instead of the previous 22,000 naira for an hour flight. Indications are that some of the airlines have already fixed some of the fares that will come into effect on March 1. A survey of airline ticketing showed that an economy class domestic ticket on domestic flight outbound just to Abuja from March 1, 2020 now sells 2022, I beg your pardon, now sells at 50,000 naira, while another airline traveling Lagos to Port Harcourt goes for 35,000 naira as opposed to its current 16,500 fare. The airlines, under the aegis of Airline Operators of Nigeria (AON), had issued a statement complaining about the current high cost of aviation fuel. They say aviation fuel costs above 410 naira in Lagos, for instance, 422 naira in Abuja and Port Harcourt, and 429 naira in Kano per litre, while the dollar, which sells for between 580 naira to 600 naira, is in short supply. This is the situation before air travelers in Nigeria, and joining me to discuss these issues is a former managing manager Nigeria Airspace Management Agency (NAMA) and President Top Brass Aviation Limited, Captain Roland Iyai. Captain, you're welcome to Business Express.
Good afternoon.
Yes, great, and it's so good to have you on the program.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes, perhaps we start with the recent flight cancellations. We've experienced some delays, some cancellations, and let me just ask the question most Nigerians are asking: what's going on?
Thank you very much. The issue of cancellations and delays, with domestic airlines, is not entirely a problem born out of the inadequacies of the domestic airlines themselves. But 90% of the problem is actually the inadequacy of infrastructure.
Okay.
And assuming we're able to take all those out of a system, what you'll find will be an improvement in the situation, even though we know that the airlines themselves have certain elements of the problem to bear. I talk about problems with the airline. When airlines acquire aircraft, typically they bring the aircraft in, and by the time the aircraft is already coming in, they have scheduled those airplanes for operations. Unfortunately, when the aircraft arrives, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority requires to have what you call a post-arrival inspection. Now, that can take anything from between a week to a month, depending on a lot of things. Sometimes you get to hear that the inspector who had done inspection out of a country on behalf of the NCAA is no longer around because he's gone on another assignment. And of course, what that means is the airline is delayed. Now, assuming this airline had gone ahead to schedule the airplane on the basis of the fact that they assume that within a week they'll be back in the air with this airplane. Naturally, because they now have a shortfall in capacity, vis-a-vis the schedules already put in place, it becomes necessary to either delay or cancel. That's just on the side of the airline. Now, when you look at the infrastructure element, early every morning, you have almost about maybe 10, 12 flights departing out of Lagos, for instance, simultaneously. What that essentially means is that, within a window of an hour, you probably would have had about maybe 20 flights. Unfortunately, when it gets to a point where you have delays because of departure delays where aircraft are held, on the holding point for maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes, the ripple effect of not departing on time as scheduled early in the day becomes evident all through the day. Wow. Because what it means essentially is that the aircraft leaves for Abuja is already 1 hour delayed. It gets to Abuja 1 hour delayed. Out of Abuja, there's another maybe 30 minutes delay. So that's 2 hours already by the time it departs. That would affect the entire schedule for that airline throughout the entire day. Now, bear in mind that the entire aviation system relies on the operating window of between maybe 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. for 24-hour airports, and whilst most of the airports by 5:30, 6 o'clock they're done. Now, for those airports that have a 24-hour capacity, it's easy to now delay flights longer into those places, which is why you find sometimes flights that are meant to have arrived at Abuja maybe 8 o'clock are now arriving about 12 midnight. It wasn't intended that way, but it's a ripple effect of what has happened from the beginning of the day for most airlines. The issue of capacity, parking of airplanes at airports, these are things that affect the efficiencies of airlines. And unfortunately, you can't blame the airlines for that, but the airlines actually take the fall for it. Because, I mean, as far as the consumers are concerned, the airlines are the ones responsible.
Yeah. And
they're the ones to be hit. Whereas, where you have sort of inadequate capacities at the airport, that's a function of, that's directly under the purview of the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria. Where you have delays due to air traffic control, that's NAMA. So all these things, if you put them together, aggregated, you find that 90% of them are infrastructural, they're systemic. If you can take that out of the equation, and that has to do with the government, then it changes the dynamics completely.
So recently we've seen a lot of pent-up anger from some of these passengers, and you see some go the extra mile to attack some of the airline operators on ground there at the airports. So basically, if I am a passenger, for instance, and I'm having this sort of issues to deal with at the airports, what do I do?
Well, you see, it's unfortunate that we have what you call violent passengers, really, at this point in time. It's not understandable by any stretch of the imagination. You cannot, for the sake of the fact that a flight was delayed, decide to attack somebody else. There is no justification for it. We can understand your frustration because you're not getting to meet with your appointments as at when due. But it's no justification to say that you now take out that anger on a third party. The third party is a worker for the airline. The airline does not control a lot of all these issues we're talking about. It is controlled by government. So I think it is important for the passengers to be aware that most of the things they really worry about and sort of take the airlines on are totally out of the remit of the airlines. The airlines can do so much when it comes to what it is within their own control. But anything outside of their control, they're also victims. So I think, whilst I understand the frustration of passengers, it is important to let them know that no airline would want to necessarily delay flights, because it's a cost when you delay. Your aircraft can be used only so many hours in a day. So if you delay flights, you reduce the potential of optimizing that asset. And aircraft are bound to be in the air all the time. If they're not in the air, the airline is losing money. So any airline delaying is actually undoing itself. So I do not think any airline will go out of its way to deliberately delay flights or cancel flights. It's a loss. So I would plead that passengers understand that what we're dealing with here as airlines is actually systemic. And except, of course, that rot is taken out of a system, we would continue to have these issues. But for the time being, I know the government is doing everything it can to see how this can be managed, but so far it's overwhelming, even for the airlines. No airline wants to, like I said, take all these things on and lose their passengers and the patronage they're getting from that.
Okay, so we're having these issues, and we're also having the airlines and the whole aviation sector not fully back to the pre-pandemic situation we had, right?
Yes.
And while there's so much anger, the next issue that is before us is that the airfares are going to increase. What can you tell us the possible reason for this increase?
Well, the truth of the matter is, when you look at the economics of an airline operation, it is dollar denominated, every facet of it, from buying your spare parts, from training your crew, from even the fuel is a function of the dollar rate. So when you look at everything that has to do with the airline operation, we're talking over 90% is dollar denominated. So when you have a situation where the exchange rate of the naira to the dollar fluctuates on a daily basis. It does not give room for any form of planning. And no airline wants to be in a situation where it cannot really plan, because that's the worst thing that can happen to any airline. But unfortunately, that is the environment in which we found ourselves to operate in. And for as long as that is the case, it is inconceivable that an airline will want to sell fares for less than the production cost. The cost of producing a seat on a flight, when you work it out on the basis of exchange rate, what you see now that is being demonstrated by the increases is a fair reflection of that, unfortunately. I mean, there's a difference between when the dollar was exchanging at 150 and now when it's about over 500. We're talking over 350% depreciation. When you're buying spares, your supplier is not really interested in how much money you make selling your ticket. They just want to know that you can deal at basically on the international standards, which is what we're faced with. So the issue here is a function of the exchange rate to the dollar.
So is there any way, before I let you go, this whole increase and what we're grappling with, is there any way it's going to impact on the efficiency that we're talking about?
Well, like I said, I mean, the fares is not really a direct function of efficiency. Okay. The fares is just a matter of cost of production.
Yeah, that's the market, and so that we can get that understanding.
Right, clear.
Yes.
The issue of efficiencies is predominantly the doorstep of the federal government. If the airports can provide adequate parking area, apron space for most of the domestic carriers, where they don't have to park in such a way that they're blocking each other when they arrive, and then when they need to depart, they're now having to tow an aircraft out of a way for another one to taxi out. That's part of the delays. When you have a situation where at the airport in the morning, you have several check-in and screening points, that you don't have to have delays screening several flights at the same time, so that by the time the flight is actually to be called for departure, the passengers have been cleared. That would be a function of efficiencies. But all these are out of the hands of the airline. It's a function of the services provided by government agencies, which I believe strongly, as much as they're trying, it's a fact that it's not adequate at this point in time, and that's why we have all this.
Okay, we're hoping that we'll find a breakthrough in a very, very short while.
Hopefully.
Yes, sincerely thank you, Captain Roland Yayi, for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
Great. And so we move on to the equities market, where the traders last week lost 30.8 billion naira as financial stocks contributed 64.14%. Let's join Aisha Musa.
The Nigerian stock market recorded its second weekly loss in the year, as the all-share index declined by 0.13% in the week ended 18th February 2022 to close at 47,202.3 basis points, following the 0.16% decline recorded in the previous week, while the market capitalization followed suit to close at 25.4 trillion naira. This is according to the information contained in the weekly stock market report released by the Nigerian Exchange Group. A total turnover of 1.7 billion shares, worth 30.7 billion naira, in 24,767 deals were traded by investors on the floor of the exchange. Meanwhile, all other indices finished higher, with the exception of the NGX Premium, NGX Banking, NGX AfriBank Value, NGX Oil and Gas, and NGX Industrial Goods, which depreciated, while the NGX Main Board, NGX ASEM, NGX Growth, and NGX Sovereign Bond indices closed flat. The financial services industry led the activity chart in terms of volume of shares traded, with 1.64 billion shares valued at 12.2 billion naira across 11,700 deals. The consumer goods industry followed with 156.077 million shares, worth 5 billion naira in 4,877 deals, while the conglomerates industry recorded a turnover of 113.5 million shares at 309.8 million naira across 1,062 deals. The top three equities by value were Access Bank PLC, Guarantee Trust Holding Company PLC, and Fidelity Bank PLC. At the end of the week's trade, 43 equities appreciated in price, 38 equities depreciated in price, while 75 equities remained unchanged.
Thank you, Aisha. We move outside Nigeria now, where European stocks are choppy with Russia-Ukraine tensions in focus. Asian stocks are mixed as China holds steady on benchmark lending rate. Boss today, Abel. It's over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Leah. Now, U.S. President Joe Biden has accepted in principle a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, paving the way for last-ditch diplomatic effort to avert an invasion of Ukraine by Russian forces. However, markets in the United States are closed Monday for the President's Day holiday, having dropped sharply on Friday as global markets were roiled by rising tensions in Eastern Europe. Now, Europe stocks traded mixed on Monday. London FTSE mildly dipped at 0.13% at 7,523.71, while CAC 40 and DAX were on the low. And now shares in Asia Pacific were mixed on Monday as investors continued to watch the situation surrounding Ukraine. Meanwhile, China left a benchmark lending rate unchanged. The Nikkei 225 in Japan fell 2% momentarily in morning trade before retracing some of the losses, eventually ending in the trading day at 0.78% lower at 26,910.87. Shanghai Composite dipped 0% at 3,490.66. Hang Seng Index also followed 0.65% at 24,170.07. And the Nikkei was not left behind as it dipped 0.78% across 26,910.87. Now, African markets are also affected by the global trend, with South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40, Tunisia's Tunidex, and Namibia's overall index on the negative note. Nairobi's all share was muted, while Ghana's GSE Composite was marginally positive at 2,693.11. That's the global market review. I am Boss Sede Ebo. Back to Leah.
Hi, Boss. So it's so nice of you bringing us those updates from the global market scene.
Thank you very much.
Do have a nice one.
Same.
And so we move straight to the commodities markets. For those who misconstrue President Muhammadu Buhari when he said he will take 100 million people out of poverty, well, Minister of Works and Housing Babatunde Raji Fashola says should follow him to understand the statement better. This was when he embarked on road inspection and interaction with the people of northwest Nigeria. Abdullahi Mohammed reports.
Burrowing through the harsh weather with a quorum of specialists, the minister's fleet stepped on the throttle. In proving a point, the big and atom-sized picture the progress made on the construction of the Abuja-Kaduna-Kano highway must be laid bare. And so, every mile on the highway matters with the eye of the emissary and the public in every stop. 107 kilometers. Each kilometer a revelation of the uniqueness of the method being used to build the highway. First, the component of the old is recycled, and the refined materials are then laid back to form the new.
We are planning to start rolling out wave bridges, but
on arrival in Kano, Katsina-Kano Highway, a product of Sukuk, was subjected to the test tube. The stability of the camera shoot from one of the vehicle in motion gives you an idea of its integrity. But most importantly, this is the road by which the biggest grains market in Africa lies. You may begin to wonder how much cheaper it will be for farmers and traders to move their grains to this market as a result of building these highways from a single lane years back. These are the little drops of payback by the Buhari-led administration to the chain of activities which slowly but surely pull out millions of Nigerians from penury.
if I talk of what I earned for just these 30 days, nobody will believe.
But where else would the emissary of the president tell this story than a gathering of youths from across the northwest Nigeria?
When we were coming in 2015, what did we promise Nigerians? It is happening now.
Traveling back, the difficult task of managing construction with commuters in some point is prevalent. Just by the Kaduna-Zaria Highway, another completed housing project waiting for occupants. This, for the minister, is another giant stride with a wave of benefits that touches lives. In Abuja, Abdullahi Muhammad.
Of course, and before we end the program, let me just run you through updates from the Nigerian stock market, where the oil share index at the close of trade this Monday advanced marginally to 47,233.91 basis points. Market capitalization, equity capitalization, closed at 25,456 trillion naira, with a volume of trade closing out at 421 million, valued at 4.22 billion naira in 5,961 deals. And this is where we end this edition of Business Express. We value your feedback, so keep the comments, observations, and suggestions coming. Be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on the NTA's channel. The program returns tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m.